Alrighty, good morning. Kiddos, if you haven't already left, you can head on back to the gym area where I believe Miss Nancy has got some cool stuff planned for you. Let's see. Back that up. All right, so we are about halfway through looking at some of the specifics of what it should look like if we as believers are going to grow up and look like Jesus. And not just know what he says, but do what he did, all of that kind of stuff. And we've talked over the past few weeks, we've talked about how we should walk in or live in or grow up in unity. We've talked about purity. Last week we talked about love and how we should be walking in love, walk in purity, walk in unity. But this week is going to be different. This week we're not talking about what we are walking in. We're talking about what we should be walking as. And so over the past few weeks we've talked more about, where you should live, how you should live. But this week what we're going to do is we're going to actually talk more about who you are or what you are. And so we're in Ephesians chapter 5, and we're in verses 7 to 14. So it picks up from where we were last week, where it talked about walking in love and how we're supposed to do that. And now it expands and it gives us a reason why. And so I'm just going to read this for you. Ephesians chapter 5, verses 7 to 14. It says, "Therefore, do not become partners with them." And with them is talking about what we were talking about last week, is as people who are not walking in love, but they're also walking in sin. And so it says, do not be partners with them. And then verse 8 goes on, "For at one time you were darkness, but now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore, it says, awake, O sleeper, arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you." Now, I don't know if you're like me, but you just kind of read that at first glance. You kind of go, okay, yeah, that sounds like biblical. But what does it mean? What am I supposed to do with it? And if I'm summarizing what this is saying, and we'll break it down, but I want us to get this, that your identity determines your influence. Okay? Now, a lot of times we think it's something different. We think that, the things that we do determines our influence. We think that what people say about us determines our influence. We think that our reputations determine our influence, and to some degree that they're true. But if you understand who you are, particularly who you are as a believer in Jesus Christ, things will change. Because that identity, your identity in Christ, is what determines your influence. Okay? And this is good news, but only if you know who you are. So, let's unpack this. Hopefully this will help make some sense. In verse 7 and 8, okay, "Therefore do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness, but now you are light." Right? Don't be partners with them. For one time you were darkness, and now you are light in the Lord. So walk as children of light. There's a competing contrast here, okay? It's one or the other. You guys know this, it says this, but I want to explain something. You are either light or darkness. I want you to notice something, because a lot of times we'll just skip over this. It does not say, walk in the light. It says, walk as the light. It does not say that you were once in darkness and you are now in the light. It says that you are either light or darkness. And there is a big difference here. Because what Paul is writing to the Ephesians here is something that explains what your identity is. And this is what makes it good news. Is that you are light. If you are a follower, a believer in Jesus Christ, if you have accepted the gift that He's offered through His death, burial, and resurrection, you've received the Holy Spirit as a deposit guaranteeing what's to come. That was earlier in Ephesians. You are light. But we don't feel like light. We don't feel like it. Now, let me just try and help you understand something. How many of you like pickles? Okay? Can you pick pickles? No, Peter Piper can. No, you can't pick pickles. What do you pick? Cucumbers. Are cucumbers pickles? No, not yet. And pickles, they're not exactly cucumbers anymore. In other words, you could not take pickles out of a pickle jar and put them in the produce section of the grocery store and expect somebody to buy them and go, ooh, I'm so excited for cucumbers. Like, if you were to do that and buy a pickle from the produce section as a cucumber and then put it on your salad, you're just weird. Yuck. Something's changed, okay? It's what they are. There's something different. Now, this light that we're talking about, we should walk in the light as He's in the light. We understand that. But Paul is saying that you are light. And this goes back, it talks about even what Jesus said, that He was light. So you go back and you look in John chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Okay, but go a couple verses later. John is just starting his story, and he starts out in John chapter 1, verse 4, and I'm just going to read this to you. Verse 4, he says, in Him, he's referring to Jesus, in Him was life, and the life was what? The light of men. It's not saying that Jesus just came and He walked in the light. Jesus was the light of men. And the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Okay, Jesus was light. Jesus was the light in the darkness. The darkness did not overcome it. And then he goes on, and I'm just going to read you through about verse 13. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. John's writing this book. He goes, he was as a witness to bear witness about the light, and that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but he came to bear witness about the light. Again, we're looking. Jesus is the light. Guys, you need to understand this. You and I, what Paul is saying is, we are light. And I think too many of us don't understand that we are light in the same way that Jesus entered a dark world as light. He goes on. The true light, verse 9, which gives light to everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made through Him, yet the world did not know Him. He came to His own, and His own people did not receive Him. But to all who received Him, who believed in His name, He gave the right to become children of God, who were born not of blood, nor of the will of the flesh, nor of the will of man, but of God. So Jesus came as light, came into a dark world as light, so that we could see people like us become children of light. This is how we're supposed to walk, as children of light, which means you are light. You are, as a follower of Jesus, like Jesus. We don't believe that because we know ourselves. But we should live as children of light. We should walk as children of light. You guys know, most of you know John 3:16. Okay, Nicodemus comes and he's asking, he's a religious leader and he wants to find out about Jesus. What does a man need to do to be born again? And Jesus tells him that famous John 3:16. What is it? For God so loved the world that... Yep. You guys are pretty good. You got it, okay? Well, a little bit later, like 2 verses later. Whoever believes in Him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe is condemned already because he hasn't believed in the name of the only Son of God. And this is the judgment. This is verse 19, John 3. This is the judgment. The light has come into the world, and people loved darkness rather than the light, because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light, and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. But whoever does what is true comes to the light, so that he may be clearly seen that his works have been carried out by God. Okay, so again, I'm going to hammer on this, because it's too easy to gloss over and say, we just need to walk in the light. But like cucumbers don't grow up and just get to walk into, vinegar or walk into salt water and become pickles. They don't have legs. Okay? They don't just get to say, ooh, I want to will myself to become a pickle. They can't do that. And for us to think that we can do something a stupid cucumber can't do, that we can move ourselves into the light and suddenly become something by our own sheer willpower, apart from Jesus, we can live a good, religious, light-giving life, but not actually be light, is ridiculous. Okay? When we come to Jesus, we become something that we weren't, not because of what we've done, but because of what He's done. And we become something better than what we were because of what He's done for us. Okay, so we are the light. And we know this. And so Jesus, when he's teaching, he starts on the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew chapter 5. He starts out with the Beatitudes. Blessed are these people and these people and those people, for they shall whatever, this and that. And the very next thing he says, he talks about salt, and he talks about light. And so in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, here's what he says to the people that he's talking to. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they might see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. So let me take you back to Ephesians. Back to Ephesians. Therefore, do not become partners with them, for at one time you were darkness. Okay? This means that you weren't light. You were darkness. You were a sinner. You were messed up. You were evil. You were wicked at one time. Some of you may still be right now. It's not good news, but the good news doesn't come unless you know that there's bad news. You were darkness. Not just in darkness. You weren't just blinded. You were darkness. You were the expression of the brokenness of the world. Until Jesus gets a hold of you, and then you become light. And you are the light of the world. A city on a hill can't be hidden. All that kind of stuff is what he talks about. And so what he's saying here is we should be who we are, not be who we were. So, do we do that very well? I don't think so. So I brought something. Actually, I didn't. I forgot it, and I asked my kids to bring it. Okay? Okay? This is a light. Ready? Cover your eyes. Okay? 2 million candle power. That's a lot of light. Now, we could shut the lights off in here. We could do this. Like, this would come in very handy. Josh, I appreciate you closing your eyes, because I'm going to keep shining it in your face. I won't shine it in your baby's face, though. Oh, you guys in the dark. Hey. Good to see you. Hey, Ethan. All right? Now, here's what happens. You used to be in darkness, okay? So like this thing before it got plugged in. You used to be in darkness. You can pull the trigger all you want. It's not going to work. Okay? Not going to work. But then you become light. And so everywhere we go, there's something about this. Now, let me just tell you, if I shine this in your face enough, you're going to get annoyed at me, aren't you? Okay? Anybody annoyed yet? Yeah, okay, good. Okay? Do you understand what happens? I want you to get this. If you let the light shine, there will be places that you go sometimes and people will be not excited to see you. Because your light can reveal something. You are light. And it reveals things that sometimes people don't want to be seen. Okay, I used to be a youth pastor for a while, and so you'd go on a trip and you'd have youth, and you'd be driving in a van. And what do? You turn on the lights and hand check. Hand check. Okay? And everybody's like, I was trying to sleep. No, you weren't trying to sleep. You're trying to get away with something. You don't like the light. Now, that's just a dumb example. But there's plenty of them. There are people who hide. And so here's what we do, guys. We become the light, okay? But we don't want people to be upset with us when we walk into the room. Okay, notice I'm shining it up, not in your face. Okay? We don't want to do that. And so what we do is, even though we are the light, what we do is we put on stuff. We put on purity. We put on unity. We put on love. But sometimes what we do when we do that is we put it on over the light, and we use that as an excuse to not offend people. But what Paul is saying is, hey guys, don't become partners with them, those who do evil. And just, by the way, the word partner, koinonia, is like the word for the gathered group, kind of like the church. This just has a preposition on the front, or a prefix, su koinonia. Okay, so we're talking like, don't become united to them, intimately acquainted with them. Don't be a part of them. Do not be partakers with them. Don't become partners with them. For at one time you were darkness, but now you are in the light. Okay? But this isn't in the light. When he says walk as children of light, he's saying walk as who you are, not as who you were. Let your light so shine before men that they might see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. And here's what's going to happen. Occasionally, sometimes, there will be people who see your light and they consider you a prude or a killjoy or any other number of names that they might want to come up with. Okay, but your job isn't to cover it up to make them feel better. Your job is to be who you are. Walk as children of light. Okay, so we are the light, we don't just have the light, okay? See, like, I can turn this off. Okay? I have the light. Anybody else could have the light. Okay, but you are light. You shouldn't be able to turn it off. You can't turn it off. The only thing that you can do is hide it. And if a city on a hill cannot be hidden, then we should let our light so shine before men that they can see our good deeds and will glorify our Father in heaven. So, walk as children of light. Now, why should we walk as children of light? You look at verse 9. He says, for the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true, and try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord, verses 9 and 10. Why should we walk? Well, because light has certain characteristics, and they're good and they're beneficial, they're helpful. There are things that actually prove that the light is good. We'll talk about that in just a second. One of the ways that we know is that there's actually fruit. Like, you're not going to grow fruit in a dark closet. You're just not. In the deepest part of the sea where no light can reach, guess what there isn't? Vegetation. Because things can't grow. There's no fruit down there. Because there's no light. The fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. Okay, so there's something that we need to recognize. Okay, you are either light or darkness. I'm hoping that you will choose to be light, and not just be light, but live as light. And if you are going to live as light, then you need to understand something, and it's that light shines. And it shines in a couple ways. One of those ways is that it is good, and it's right, and it's true. Now, think about this for a second. It's good and right and true. Good is how we, as children of light, who walk as children of light, can relate to others. Okay? You can be good to other people, right? Be good and kind. It's kind of like a fruit of the Spirit. Okay? What does it mean to be right? It doesn't mean that I have to be right in front of you. You have to be right in front of me. I don't have to prove that I'm right. What he's talking about, the fruit of light, is goodness towards others. It's rightness in our relationship with God. Are you right? Are you living as a child of light? Are you being good to others? Are you right before God? And then true. Well, what do you think true is? True is actually how you and I see ourselves. And sometimes the fruit of light is that we don't see ourselves as light. We see ourselves as maybe in the light, but we know who we are, and we're like, oh no, I'm not really a child of light. I'm not righteous. I'm not holy. And yet, Jesus has given you righteousness and holiness, and he's put it on you, and you have become the righteousness of Christ. You are. And you are light. And if you don't believe that, then you're not bearing some of the fruit of light. There's a truth that's missing where you don't see yourself as Jesus has created you to be. We should walk and live as children of light. You once were darkness, now you are light. And light shines. And so when you look at verse 10, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of how the ESV says it because it doesn't really get it across. In verse 10, where it says, try to discern what is pleasing to the Lord. Okay, this is one of those things that sometimes we're like, okay, well, what is the Lord's will for me? What am I supposed to do? And we don't always know. And we're like, well, try to discern. It's not exactly what he's talking about. The try to discern there is a word that's used and often translated as test. And if you guys who have just finished college or you're in high school and you're going to have to take a test, what is the teacher trying to get you to do when she or he hands you a test? They're trying to get you to prove that you know what they taught. You're not getting out of here unless you can prove to me that you know the material. That's what they're doing. End of grade testing, all that kind of stuff. You're there to prove something. That's what a test is. And so the word that's used here, try to discern what the Lord's will is really better probably test or prove what the Lord's will is. That's how we know that we are children of light, as we are good, as we are right in our relationship with God, and we are true to who God has said that we are. Try to prove that. And just to give you an idea how this works, if you want to look in Galatians chapter 6, this word is used, and I'll just read it to you so you can see kind of the context of this trying to discern what it means. Galatians chapter 6, verses 3, 4, and 5. Here's what it says. For if anyone thinks he's doing something when he is nothing, he deceives himself. Okay, and what he's talking about there is, look, you can't just pretend to be light, you have to be light. That's kind of the principle behind it. He says, but let each one test his own work. That word test, try to discern, test his own work, and then his reason to boast will be in himself alone and not in his neighbor, for each one will have to bear his own load. But if you test, if you can prove that what you're talking about is true, that you are the light, this is a good thing. So don't become partners with them, for at one time you were in darkness, but now you are light. You weren't in darkness, you were darkness. But now you are light in the Lord. Walk as children of light. Be who you are, not who you were. For the fruit of light is found in all that is good and right and true. And so, basically, prove it. Prove what is pleasing to the Lord by living as children of light, good and right and true. Now, hopefully, if you are a follower of Jesus, I'm really hoping that you will be somewhat encouraged to live as who you are and not who you maybe feel like you are or other people have said that you are, but to live as children of light. Like, you are light, and light does shine. And you don't have to be ashamed of it. You don't have to cover it up. You don't have to pretend. You don't have to make apologies. You are light. But there's something that we are called to do. And so in verse 11 and 12, take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. For it's shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. Okay, what he's giving us here as children of light, any parent who has a child looks at their child and gives them some kind of instruction. Now, sometimes it's warnings and sometimes it's, hey, please do this. Like I walked in this morning and Jameson and Landon are here and Jameson comes up to me and, hey, buddy, how you doing? I'm just smiling at him. He's like, I'm good. I was like, why are you smiling? And he didn't answer me right away, and so I went and dropped something off, and I come back and he goes, hey, you know why I'm smiling? Because I'm ready to work. You want to help? Okay, well, I'll help you. And so then I just give him some instructions. Do this, don't do this, do this. and he did it, and he's great. This is what we do with children. So as children of light, there are things that we're supposed to do, and we're given commands. And so our job, what Paul is saying right here and what the Bible is teaching us, is that we are to obey these commands. And the command is this: take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. It's shameful to even speak of the things that they do in secret. And so it's not just a command, there's actually a couple of commands. There's really kind of two. It's like a do and a don't. Okay? The first one is don't participate. Don't participate. You are light. As a child of light, walk as a child of light, and don't participate. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness. Now, I could sit here and list off all kinds of unfruitful works of darkness. You can go back just in chapter 5 and look at all kinds of unfruitful works of darkness. Okay? But in verse 12 he says, don't even mention what they do. So I'm not gonna. Okay? There's a whole understanding that some things are unfruitful. Some of the TV shows that we watch, the jokes that we listen to or tell, the things that we find humorous or entertaining, the things that we chase after sometimes, that we participate in, that we are excited about. Sometimes we are taking part in the unfruitful works of darkness. But as children of light, we are not supposed to do that. We should not participate. See, it's being in the world but not of it. Sometimes people think you need to actually participate in some of these things in order to understand or to be able to reach them. I was one of those guys at one point. A long time ago, before we even had kids, before we even got married. Okay, luckily I ended up losing this argument because Laura probably wouldn't have married me. But there was a time, I was a new believer. I didn't really understand. I had never been discipled. I didn't have community around me. And so I'm like, I'm doing the best I can. And I remember literally making this argument, okay? And I'm ashamed of it, but this is how I thought, and some of us think. So I'm going to give you an extreme example. I made the argument that in order to understand what was going on and be able to reach people and maybe even talk to my children if I ever had them, so it's before you guys even came, I needed to participate in some things. And so I had friends that, hey, you're in college, you got a lot of freedom, and they like, hey, we're going to go to the strip club. I'm like, that sounds like a good idea. And I'll know what's going on, and I'll be able to talk to these people and reach them. And I remember when I told my wife about that, and she's like, what are you thinking? No, you can't do that. No, my gosh, Jason, that is so stupid. But I literally would argue with her that I needed to take part in this. Like there was some holy accountability that I was providing while I was there. But no, there wasn't any. I was just ridiculously justifying myself, thinking that I needed to participate in the darkness in order to be able to reach the darkness. But that is not true. What should have happened is the other command. Don't participate in it. Don't take part in it. Don't think that you need to be there for the moral support of somebody as they're acting immoral. Instead, expose it. So you don't participate, but you do expose. So here's how that would play out. Okay? And this is what makes so many believers uncomfortable. So many uncomfortable. If I were to go to a strip club, it wouldn't be in order to just sit with my friends and talk to them and try and form relationships. No. And number one, I wouldn't go. But it would be to walk in like this. Hey, I know your name. I'm sending your license and a picture of you sitting in here to your wife. You shouldn't be acting like that. That's what it means to expose it. I'm sorry, Tyler's not... I was shining it on Tyler. No, he doesn't do that. We don't have to have that conversation. Okay? Just to be clear. But this is what we're talking about. But just raise your hand if you're comfortable doing that. Okay? Oh, I'm the light. I want to walk as a child of light. I'm going to walk in and I'm going to expose the darkness. Nobody wants to do that. Or at least weird people want to do that. But as children of light, this is what we are called to do. is don't participate in it, but not only that, expose it. Okay, but then you see verse 12. And verse 12 says, it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. So how do you expose something that you can't talk about? How do you do that? Anybody know? Prayer might work. Take pictures. That might get you arrested in some cases. Okay, it's an option, but I want you to think about this. I'm going to give you a second longer. And you can keep throwing them at me. How do you do that? How do you expose the darkness that you're not participating in, but not talk about it? What's that? Still didn't understand. Refuse to partake. Okay, yep, that's actually very much a part of it. Is there anything else that you can do? Okay, I'll give you an example. So I remember, you guys, a lot of you know my wife. She's not here. She's with Hannah on a mother-daughter retreat. And so she, in various workplaces, has been there when people start talking about things. They're totally inappropriate. It's literally wickedness that they're talking about. It might be gossip about somebody who's done this, that, and the other, and it's shameful to even mention what people have done in secret, but yet there they are doing it. It might be just degrading, disgusting, talk, joking, whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, and Laura is so good about this. And she will say, hey guys, can we not talk about that? Or, hey guys, that's really, you're making me really uncomfortable. And she'll say something. And so, exactly like you were saying, William, you can expose these things without talking about these things by talking about the fact that you're light. You can expose these things by actually bringing what you've got, your light, into dark places. I'll give you, for instance, okay? There was one time in my student ministry in the youth building, which was a separate building, kind of like this. It's on campus, youth building. And there was something going on at church. And there was a young man and a young lady, and then somehow they got into the youth building. And you know what happens? When you walk in there, you don't have to say anything as they're half clothed. All you have to do is turn on the light. And suddenly, they are aware of the fact that they are in sin. You don't have to tell them that they're in sin. You don't even have to talk about it. You're just like, whoa. And just like cockroaches, they scurry. If you've ever walked into your kitchen and had cockroaches, you know that's true, right? You don't have to say, hey, cockroach, come out wherever you are, you dirty rascal. You just turn on the light. This isn't something that just happens outside the church, though. It's something that we should actually be doing inside the church. A lot of times you hear this, judge not lest you be judged. We shouldn't judge. Okay, well, yeah, we should. Because, and I'll get to this in a second, but as children of light, you don't have to say anything. You have to be something. Which is why he says walk as children of light. But when it comes to the church, okay, you can say something. If you want to go look in 1 Corinthians chapter 5. In 1 Corinthians chapter 5, Paul's given instructions to the church. Okay, he's writing to these guys. He's telling them how they're supposed to behave. He's actually talking about the darkness and the wickedness that is happening in that church. He's exposing it. You can read through the whole chapter. But in verse 9, here's what he says. I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people. Well, Paul, you're judging. Listen to what he says. Not at all meaning the sexually immoral of the world, or the greedy, or the swindlers, or idolaters, since then you'd need to go out of the world. Okay, so there's a lot of these people in the world. I'm not talking about not associating with people in the world who are sinners, because you'd have to leave, because the world's filled with sinners. But, verse 11, but now I am writing to you, not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother if he is guilty of sexual immorality or greed or is an idolater or a reviler, a drunkard, a swindler. Don't even eat with such a one. Hey guys, think about this. If there was somebody in this church who was a drunk, or an idolater, or a drunkard, well, I already said drunkard, didn't I? Sexually immoral. Do you know what our charge is as children of light? It's not to put your arm around him and say, brother, I love you. That might be part of it, but it ain't the only thing. It's say, brother, you are a wicked sinner. You are evil. This should not be taking place in here, in the body of believers, in the children, in the family of God who are children of light. And nobody wants to do that, and we don't talk about that because it's so harsh and it goes against everything that we think Jesus taught. And yet, Paul, who's inspired by the Holy Spirit, is teaching that exact thing. I'm writing to you not to associate with anyone who bears the name of brother if he's guilty of sexual immorality or greed or is an idolater or reviler, a drunkard, a swindler. Don't even eat with such a one. For what have I to do with judging outsiders? Is it not those inside the church whom you are to judge? God judges those outside. Purge the evil person from among you. It makes me sad sometimes that we think tolerance is biblical. Remember, go back to the beginning. You are either light or you are darkness. And if you are light, you should shine as light. You should shine as light. And what is good and what is right and what is true. We just don't have the option. And so, we don't participate in it, but we also expose it. So, here's why. Didn't I already do that? Maybe I didn't tell you, sorry. Look at verse 13. When anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. And we are the children of light. And if we want people to see the light, then there needs to be some light. And so maybe we just need to ask ourselves, can people see around you? Are people able to see around you? When you enter into situations and people and groups and circumstances and stuff, is your mere presence able to expose what should be obvious? Sometimes it might require you to say something. Sometimes just walking in, I can't tell you how many times this has happened. If I'm out golfing, I probably can tell you how many times because it doesn't happen all that often. But I remember when Ralph invited me and we did a golf trip and we went down to Pinehurst, Myrtle Beach or something like this, and Ralph knows a bunch of people. There's a bunch of people golfing. And I don't know them because they're Ralph's friends. And so we just get paired up and you're out golfing, and about the third, fourth, fifth, sixth hole, conversation shifts around to, so what do you do? And this is after they've hit a few bad shots, one in the water, this and that. They've cussed out the ball. They've put a hole in the green. They've chucked their club in the water. So what do you do? And they tell me what they do and say, what do you do? I'm a pastor. And they go, I'm so sorry. And then for the rest of the round, I don't have to say anything. This guy hits a bad shot and he's like, oh. And the guy's, hey, pastor. No, not pastor. Child of light. And my mere presence. This should be the same for us too. Your mere presence. It happens at the softball team. It was just there, and there's people telling me stories of what's going on. It was like, now excuse me for this. I'm going to say it as cleanly as possible. Let me clean it up for you, and they'll tell me a story. Why do they do that? Well, because I'm there. And as a child of light, light makes things visible, and when things are visible, they know that they've been exposed, and so they don't want to be exposed for what they are, and so they make sure that they clean up their language and they're telling their stories. So can people see around you? When anything is exposed by light, it becomes visible. This isn't actually just a statement. This is actually not just a command even. This is what our commission is. This is our job, people. As children of light, this is what we get to do. It's not what we get to do. It is what we are tasked to do. Whenever anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. And when I was studying, I just came across this. I can't remember. I didn't write down who it was, but I came across this statement that one of the guys that I respect had written. And he was talking, I think it was John MacArthur maybe. And he was talking about how we, entering into situations as children of light, bring to bear on those situations the light of the gospel. We bring Jesus into those situations and circumstances. It's like evangelism. And so what he says is, it is not evangelism to tolerate people and to just love them and never talk about their evil. It is evangelism to make them face the fact of sin. That hurts. At least it hurts me, because there are so many times I just want to get to the story. I just want to tell you about the love of Jesus and his death, burial, and resurrection and how you can be set free, but I don't actually want to tell you that you're a sinner, because that might make you not like me, and then you won't respond to the gospel. But evangelism isn't just tolerating people, and it's not just loving them and never talking about their evil. It is evangelism to make them face the fact of sin. And we don't like this because it doesn't make us feel good, and Lord knows it doesn't make them feel good. But I'll give you an example where we have an opportunity to say something that could bring about good, even though we're having to tell bad. There was one time, it was years ago, I was at the beach, and there was this woman who was walking, and she literally had a hole in her bottoms. Okay? And it got bigger when she bent over to do something. Okay? So she's like, yeah, okay, what do you do? There's a woman at the beach who has, whatever her bikini bottom's on, and she's got a hole in it, and she goes to fix something, and suddenly it goes, rip, and she is at the beach. Okay? Now, if you're that woman, do you want somebody to tell you, or you just want to roll around and moon everyone? What do you want? And if you're the guy who sees that, what do you want? You want somebody else to say, whoa, I ain't saying nothing. Excuse me, miss. Your butt's showing. Like, how do you do that nicely?
Send your wife.
Send your wife. It'd be good if she was there. What do? You got to say something, right? You got to say something. Nobody's happy about it. I'm not happy saying anything. Poor bare butt woman is not happy that some man just said, hey, I saw your butt. But she can definitely be happy that she can put a wrap around and wear a towel or something, right? Like, I'm not going to spend the rest of my day mooning everyone. Hey, guys, it doesn't have to feel good to be right. It doesn't have to make them feel good to be right. This is our commission, is to bring light. And she was exposed, but it was only after she was exposed, and it was exposed, that she could take some corrective action. And so, at the end of the day, our commission is this, and we need to understand that light, being light, is evangelism. And the light exposes. And sometimes the light offends. And sometimes the light upsets. And sometimes your mere presence makes people wish you would leave. But that does not mean that you're not a child of light. And it does not mean that you do not have the favor of God. It simply means that there are people who need the light, and the light, when things are exposed by the light, it makes things visible. So people need to see Jesus, but it's not just that. They need to see their need for Jesus, which goes to the last verse, and it's literally this. He's summarizing, kind of paraphrasing, re-quoting Isaiah chapter 60. It says, for anything that becomes visible is light, and therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. Awake, O sleeper. Arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. We are light, and if we're awake. And we who are light, we're not dead. Okay, you used to be darkness, now you're light. Like, There's something different about you. And so we who have the light of Christ shining on us also have the light of Christ shining in us. And so wherever we go, as we are evangelizing as people of light, sometimes you're saying something, sometimes you're just there, but you're not just ignoring the things that are going on. You're not participating in them. Whatever we do, we want to extend this invitation, because there are people all around us that are sleeping in their sin, that are dead in their sin. And so the invitation is simply this: wake up. Wake up. Now, depending on who it is, like if you need to wake me up, all you have to do is just make a little bit of noise. Like I'm a light sleeper. Okay? But then there's other people in my family or people that I've known who are not light sleepers, and they're the ones that you take out the Sharpie for. And when they're out, you just draw on their face and you go to town because you will not wake them up. You just don't worry about how much noise you're making when you're putting coffee and breakfast together, because they are not waking up. Okay? So not everybody's the same, but everybody needs to wake up. And sometimes those people that have really hard sleeps, really hard hearts, they might need to be exposed not just to the light, but by the light. And you are the light. And you are the light of the world. A city on a hill should not be hidden. And so let your light so shine before men that they will see your good deeds, that you don't participate and partake in these things or those things, that Jesus himself would call wicked and evil. Like, we don't need to find different words to make ourselves feel better about sin. Oh, he's just struggling. No, he's sinning. And yes, to not sin is a struggle, but let's not give him a pass. Let's give him the light, because you and I, as followers of Jesus, are children of light. So here's a couple suggestions on what you can do with this, okay? Because if this is what God says, and we have to change our mind to bring ourselves and our thoughts into conformity with Christ, that's repentance. So we think like Jesus. And then we have to do something about it. We have to believe. Okay, well, that's where we get to, okay, what's your move? You can come up with your own. Maybe God has clearly spoken to you about something already. I don't know. Maybe you need to step out of darkness because Jesus is calling you and he wants you to become a child of light. Okay, that's fine. Do that. Maybe you are a child of light, but you've been hiding and you don't want to hide anymore, and so you're going to figure out how you can let your light shine before men. That's great. But what's your move? Here's some suggestions. Okay, number one, just wake up. Wake up and stop being darkness. There are people, maybe not in this room, maybe in this room, who literally, you are darkness, you are wickedness, you are the embodiment of everything Jesus came to change. It's time to wake up. Today's the day of salvation. You don't have to be that. He's offering you adoption into his family where you can be a child of light, something completely different. No longer a cucumber, now a pickle. Everything changes. Maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you just need to recognize, okay, I am light and I need to shine. I'm tired of covering it up with good things, good deeds, good actions, good, and trying to make people just feel good. I want them to be good. And sometimes that requires the light to shine into dark places, and wherever the light shines, it reveals things that maybe we just don't need to talk about, but you can shine your light. Maybe that's what you need to do. Last one, one of these, don't forget. Act like what you are, not where you are. Because what we started with here is your identity determines your influence, and sometimes we think where we are and what's going on and circumstances and people's opinions and reputations and past behaviors and all of these things are what determine our influence. Like any of you who are second, third, fourth born, and you've gone to school and you've had the same teacher, oh, you're one of them. And so we assume that that's our influence because it's based on our reputation. No, it's not who you are. Act like who you are, not not where you are. Act like who you are as a child of light, not somebody who's living in the shadows of doubt. I don't know what it is that you might need to do in order to live in obedience, but I'm going to just simply encourage you. And I hope that we can remind you that you don't have to be partners with them. You were once darkness. You are now children of light. You're not in it. You are it. Walk as children of light. And the fruit of light is goodness, righteousness, truth. Test it. See. Don't be partakers of this. Don't partner with them. Because it's shameful to even mention what they do in darkness. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. And so, wake up, sleeper. Arise from the dead, and the light of Christ will shine on you and in you and through you. And this is who we are. You don't have to manufacture it. It's already there. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for the reminder that I don't have to become something that I get to create. I simply have to live as someone that you've turned me into. And so, Father, as children of light, I pray that we would walk in the light as He is in the light. But because we are light. And so, Father, wherever we go, that the darkness would flee, that hope would abound, and that joy would come. Not because we've arrived, but because Jesus in us is there. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.